The Multipod podcast brings multipotentialites together to discover common interests, projects, and offers in a spirit of community and collaboration. Join me, Ted Craig, as I feature guests from around the world here to share their stories and find meaningful connections. Your call to action? Reach out to them after this episode and say hello. Multipotentialites live unconventional lives by instinct and by design. The Multipod is here to empower you in living life on your terms. I find that as multipotentialites, we often find ourselves talking about the different phases of life, or seasons maybe. So whether you're maybe an adolescent and then you get into your working life into your 20s, and then maybe you have family, you have kids, and then of course the kids grow up and they move out, and then maybe you're thinking of retirement and then into old age, and all these different phases, seasons of life. It's a theme that we often come back to because it gives us a bit of a framing or framework of how to approach our commitments and the things we want to do, and just a bit of that kind of bigger picture perspective as a result. So my conversation today is with Eric Larson, and he is in the midst of one of those as we speak. So Eric has been living in Los Angeles area for most of the last 20 or so years, but about a year ago now, he moved from Los Angeles to Montreal, not too far from where I am, just down the road, really. And that's kind of the culmination of years of big changes as his kids, he's got 4 kids, and they're all basically grown up or, either moved out or about at that phase. He went through divorce, and it was time for a lot of big changes and shifts in his life. So he moved across the country and to Montreal because that's where his new partner is from. And that's just really initiated a lot of thinking and analysis of, well, what's he going to do now with the next phase of his life? Now, you might think it's often the instinct that, well, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to set all kinds of goals. I want to be here or there in 6 months, 12 months, have those kinds of benchmarks. In Eric's case, and I think a lot of us can resonate with this, he's pretty much just going with the flow. He's committed to Montreal at least, and that's an experience in and of itself, but where that's going to really take him, especially as far as work and community and interests and other things that evolve from that, well, we'll see what happens. Essentially, it's really quite the adventure. And, think about doing that, not just across the country, not just to a different country, but also in a different culture. In Montreal, you can certainly get around in English, but most people, French is their first language. And really, when you're out kind of socializing and community type things, events, most of it's in French. And so you really do have to be prepared to learn if you're going to get the most out of your time there. So, he's doing that, but it's a long process. We talk about that today. We talk about language learning and cultural immersion. We talk a lot about being present in the moment and not thinking ahead, as I say, to where you're going to be, months or years or something for now, but just what's happening around you right now. Who are you talking to? Why are you in a certain place, whether it's at a coffee shop or you're at some kind of event or you're walking down the street, what's brought you to this place and how are you absorbing that space that you're in right now? So he's going through this on pretty much a daily basis, which is fascinating. This process has involved a lot of letting go. It's letting go of the responsibilities that he's had for years. Again, as a parent, he was a stay-at-home dad for a long time. And it's quite an adjustment when you're so used to doing that kind of caregiving and responsibility, and then things change. And again, that happens to most of us and basically all of us in various shapes and forms. And if you've had kids and they've grown up, then you will have gone through that. My kids are younger, but we'll get to that point eventually. And I can only imagine what it's really like when when the kids move out and, well, what do you do next? And in his case, again, with the separation and then a new partner and changing his life, a lot of opportunities. So if that kind of change really speaks to you, especially in that phase of life, if again, you're going through it, or maybe you have gone through it, or you can see it on the horizon, right, as your kids are getting older, then Eric would be a great person to talk to because he can certainly relate. Now, he structured all these observations, maybe even the philosophy of it, in something that he calls the Sustenance Project, which is like a framework for how to kind of look around and assess where you are at life and the space that you're in. It reminds me a lot of what Ross was saying 2 episodes ago with his journaling. It is not so much a guide or a system, but really a framework. You can take this kind of a broader structure maybe and then adapt it to the space that you're in and your own particular perspective on it. But it gives you some things to think about. It gives you some questions. So Eric and I talk about that towards the end of our conversation and how he frames really trying to understand the space that he's in and the time of life that he's in as well. Now, you can find Eric on LinkedIn or in particular on Substack. He has a great Substack he's building up more and more. He sends out emails at least every couple of weeks and sometimes every week with some interesting perspectives on everything we're talking about here, his new life and all these changes and evolutions therein. So on Substack, it's called Rogue Learning. Eric Larson at Rogue Learning. Of course, we'll have the links in the notes here, but absolutely recommend signing up for that and send him a message, of course. You can do that via Substack. You can send direct messages there, and it's a growing platform. I mean, Ross is using it there too, and I know we'll have a lot more guests coming up in the next little while who are pretty active on Substack as well. It's something, maybe a good topic to explore one of our future episodes of how to make the most of that. So enjoy our conversation here. It was really neat to see Eric and to see him in person a few months ago, and at the time we said, we've got to record a podcast episode. Now that the Multipod is back up and running, he was one of the first people I reached out to. So I'm glad that it worked out, and I hope you enjoy the conversation. All right, welcome back. This is the Multipod. Pleasure to have all of our listeners and viewers with us today. So my name's Ted, and I'm very pleased to be joined by my friend Eric, who's joining me from Montreal, just down the road from where I am. How are you doing today, Eric?
I'm doing good. Pleased to be here. Excited.
Yeah, it's great to have you on the show. So for starters, this is a bit of a reacquaintance because Eric and I have actually met in person, which was a few months ago. When was that? Last fall in Montreal.
It was like September or October, I think.
On a nice fall, sunny fall day. We both had our bikes and biked around town. And I always vouch, if you have the chance to, meet the people in person who you've met online, it's amazing. It just changes everything to have someone right in front of you. And those of us who've done that, the meetups, there's the Everything Conference and things like that. And it really changes the relationship, And you and I, we chatted a bit for sure over the years through communities and stuff, but meeting in person now, it certainly feel like I know you much better. So one of my goals was, of course, to get you on the podcast here and share your story. And which is a very winding, twisty, turning one. It's led you from California. I know originally from Massachusetts, and now you're in Montreal.
That's way back.
Where do you want to begin? Where would you pick up the story? Let's say if you were to meet someone, for the first time.
If I pick up the story, yeah, that's a good question and I need to find a point because there's a lot to tell. Yeah. But I'll say I spent the last 35 years, pretty much until last June in California, first the San Francisco Bay Area, a brief hiatus of a couple of years where I lived in Hong Kong and worked there as well. And I came back to Southern California, where I in about 1998. Where I'd lived ever since, and lived in Pasadena, which is near Los Angeles. Most people have heard of that. And then the last 10 or 11 years, I lived in a town which most people tend not to have heard of, but they might know it now. It's called Altadena. And unfortunately, Altadena, most of it burned down in big fires last January. And the home that was my kids' home, and their mom's home was part of that. So that was a big thing. But my journey...
They're okay, but the house is gone.
They are okay, yes. And the cats are okay.
Yeah.
But, I always say it's stuff. It's just stuff. As long as the people, we don't last forever.
Yeah.
So we want to keep them around as much as we can. But
puts things in perspective for sure.
Mm-hmm. So I get a little bit ahead of myself, but I, had lived in California, originally worked in the technology business with startup companies, and some of them you'll never have heard of, others you will know for sure, and did that for quite a while. But then once I have 4 kids.
Yeah.
My oldest is going to be 36 this year. And the 3 younger ones are by a different marriage. They're 21, 19, and 16. And once they came along, it became really clear to my then wife and I that it was crazy for both of us to be working and to have kids. So I became a full-time dad for about 13 years. And then, I mean, you'll never stop being that. In my opinion, I'll never stop doing that. I'm always going to be their dad. But
stay-at-home dad, yeah.
Yeah. And then I gradually transitioned to, after that time, sort of in the last 10 years, because of various things that happened to my own kids, and that enlightened me about my own self as well. I got into education, and specifically what's called special education, even though I don't like that word because it's kind of has a negative term, to a negative sense. So I got a master's degree and credential in that in California. And then being kind of a person, as you know, you're probably guessing I'm a multipotentialite.
That's right.
And I like to do a lot of different things. And I found out that I love teaching and working with kids, and especially kids and adults who are what's called twice exceptional. That was sort of the genesis of this all. It's again, twice exceptional means can be exceptional in their giftedness and their talents, but they are also at the same time exceptional in challenges. So it's anything from, anxiety, ADHD, autism, and a million other things. So that's what I'm really interested in working in more. But the system of education in California was challenging for me to work in. And I've always had challenges working in big organizations. So I'm kind of that kind of played out and also was happening during the pandemic. And I was going through a divorce at the time, a lot of big changes. And about a year ago, it was almost 2 years ago, I met a person through a dating app it's an obscure one. It's called LinkedIn.
Okay.
Of all places. That wasn't the intention, but she is also a special educator here in Montreal and has been for a long time. And we connected, and, one thing led to another, and I came to visit here a year and a half ago, and then I decided to move here.
Wow. Cross country to different country. Yeah.
And that's a whole big journey in unto itself.
Right. Well, this is kind of the theme that I was interested in revolving around chatting today is you kind of described it that you're towards the end, or maybe you're at the end of what people might call the second part of the life phase that, as your kids are getting older, and even the youngest, is, I'm sure, getting ready to move out and college, university, and stuff like that before too long.
That's right.
And meanwhile, you're at that stage where, what do I do with the rest of my life kind of thing? And for us multipotentialites, I mean, we go through a lot of these phases, but how does that,
of course,
how has you been kind of reflecting on those changes, I guess, at this point in your life and making the decisions as a result, embarking on this journey? Because do you kind of set plans for where you're going to be, 5, 10 years or the rest of your life kind of thing? Or how do you view this journey you're on now?
Well, the kind of person I am and the way I'm wired, and I think there's a lot of people in the multipotentialite community are the same. You actually said the most dreaded question of life for me.
Yeah.
And this is, where do you see yourself in 5 years or 10 years?
Right.
And I'm like, I'm not that kind of person. There are some people, and there's nothing wrong with that. There are some people, they say, I want to do this. I want to go over there to that goal. There may be 8,000 steps to get there, but they're going to plot it out and map it, and they're going to check off the list and do it. Yeah. I'm much more organic. The way I describe myself is, and it's not, it's a sentence or so, but I would say I'm a writer, a storyteller. I'm a student, a teacher, and a nurturer. I'm a traveler of both the external and internal worlds. And what I do with all those things is to connect what seem like very disparate ideas. So there's like, I may get interested in this thing over there, and there's something, oh, that's interesting, and that thing, and I'll dig into these things sometimes for days, weeks, even years. And there will come a point where one day I'll just, it's like one of those, like people call it a shower moment. I'm like I'll go, oh, that and that and that, they're connected. And that's kind of what I'm returning to, is in what I'm working on. And it's not clear where I'm going to be in 5 or 10 years. What I do know is it's not going to involve any kind of organization. I mean, I can work in organizations, I can do well, and I have done well, but it just doesn't gel with me. And in the end, I'm not content with what's going on, and it doesn't always end well.
Yeah. So, like, do you feel empowered maybe right now, or just it's a moment where you're going to find and forge your own path, maybe regardless of what kind of work manifests and stuff like that, but that you're not going to just follow that so-called safe path? Or
part of the way I look at it is, what I like that midlife phase, which is often about raising kids, and it's very external. It's raising kids, it's getting a home, it's advancing your career, it's, buying, all that kind of stuff. What I look at it is going to a less material realm.
Yeah.
And part of it is a stripping away in order to get there. Brené Brown, who I like to reference a lot, calls it, people call it a midlife crisis, but that's kind of, I mean, some people may have that, but that's an intense phrase. A crisis is a big problem, but she calls it a midlife unraveling.
Oh, interesting.
And I like that phrase because that is kind of what I have been doing over the past several years, is unraveling who I became in that mid phase of life.
Yeah.
And stripping away layers. I've left a job and an industry or an organization, a structural organization. I left a marriage. I left my home. I left my kids, who are also transitioning. So it's kind of a natural time for that, to being young adults. And my mom passed away about a year and a half ago as well. So there's a lot of things I'm like getting back to the core, and kind of seeing like what's down there and what can I build on that? Because that's always been there within me.
Yeah. Does it feel liberating, I guess, to be in that moment?
Yes. Yeah, it is. It's also very hard. It is. There's a lot of grief, and because there's things that I was doing in my life that supported me in that previous life that I wanted to be part of. It wasn't, I wasn't coerced. I made the choice to do these things.
Right.
And part of it is, it becomes like this kind of, in the work I do, there's a lot of research and knowledge around how, we're learning how the human brain works and how we respond in, the polyvagal theory is something I'm very much versed in, and trauma, which is like, how do we respond to being in the world? How is the world safe for us, or what feels fearful? And a lot of the things that they're sort of, they're like the concept of neuroplasticity. Like the more you do something, it gets your mind, scientists have shown, your mind builds up these pathways, and it gets kind of wired in. What I'm stripping away is all these old ways of managing and dealing with life, in which I'm trying to think of an example of, as I said, I'm a nurturer
Yeah.
and a caregiver. And it's like, I love to help people. I love to, be taking care of people. And I don't need to do that as much anymore, but my default mode is to kind of go, oh, I need to be doing this and I need to be doing that, X, Y, and Z when I don't, or
That's interesting.
it's just not realistic anymore. So,
Right. Do you have trouble
yeah,
letting go then of
yeah,
that
it's not,
responsibility?
well, I know, this is a good point. I'm glad you said it. Up here in my mind, the cognitive part of me knows, yeah, you got to let go of that. I see I'm witnessing what I'm doing. I'm aware of how I react in situations. I have a lot of, that's the work I do. A lot of it is knowing thyself.
Yeah.
But there's other parts of you that are in your heart and your gut that they're on a different time frame of learning. And sometimes they just go automatically like, oh, I should be doing that. But my mind's going to come, but you shouldn't be doing that. But your body's saying, no. And that's where it gets hard. And that's polyvagal theory in a way. It's what's your heart and your gut are giving you signals. They're taking in information as well as putting out responses that help you be safe in the world and avoid things that might hurt you, because you all want to stay alive. That's kind of the basic premise of biology.
Yeah. Well, but then the other tangible, like kind of practical side to it is the fact that you're in a new country and a new city. And I
Yes.
imagine you don't know many people there yet. And some of them don't speak English. They only speak French. And, so how are you approaching kind of following your heart and being the caregiver you want to, and everything goes with that in this new environment the last few months?
Yes, that's a great question. What I'm doing is there's a lot of focus on doing in our culture. It's like, what are you doing? And the very American question is, what do you do?
Yes.
Which for a multipotentialite might make them want to run and hide. And I'm focused on being right now, and that's stripping away. So what I do is, I live here in Montreal. I'm right near the university, and Montreal. I've explored that whole mountain. I go on daily walks. I go running. It's a little harder. The hard part for me, so that's kind of just being. I'm learning I'm interested in nature, so I'm using apps to learn all the plants and like the other day I saw 5 marmots. It's like, they're all out now. So that's very balancing. I also have a very deep yoga and meditation practice. It's been more than 20 years I've been doing that, and I still work with one of my original teachers. It's all, she's in Los Angeles, but it's once a week. I have my asana movement class, and then I have a meditation class with her. And those are things I do. I also, to engage professionally, I'm part of an organization called, it's called the Gifted Homeschool Forum.
Okay.
And it's basically kind of a cooperative organization with resources of various kinds for people it's not just homeschooling kids. It's actually become much broader, but it has that. And it's, how do you work with kids who are gifted and have those challenges I mentioned before. I meet every week pretty much with what the professionals group, and we're on Zoom, and we're this little community, and we're all kind of connecting and talking about what we're doing. And, it's always interesting conversation. So that's how I stay connected to other people, because that's important to me.
Oh, yeah.
And what is the hard part is it's being in this new place where I don't speak the language, and it's not just French, it's Quebecois French. So,
Yes.
which I'm going to get the accent down. I'm very close. I'm good with accents. I won't try to do it now because but
it is different. It's different from France. Yeah.
Yes. My partner, and we are actually engaged now.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh,
Yes, yes, and we will. Well, it's a long story, but we're on Monday.
Hmm.
We will be in Burlington, Vermont, because it was the simplest way when we're going to get married.
Wow.
Then it has partially to do with becoming legal here as a permanent resident, which is what I want to do.
Right.
But it's something we want to do as well. So
Yeah, it's wonderful.
and we'll have a more inclusive, bigger kind of celebration as well.
Sure.
But she is a native speaker. She's also Vietnamese as well, so another language. But I hear how she speaks English. So, and I hear so it's interesting for me in learning the language to hear like little quirks that she has. And I'm like, oh, when she says that in English, that's because that's how you say it in French. Yeah, it's like, so for example, she will say oven instead of oven. That's so the H and I see a lot of French speakers here. They're like, they have trouble with an H, and they either add it when you don't need it or they take it out when you do need it. So, but anyhow, that's kind of things. Yes. Shh, Mister, you're a good boy. Okay. Anyhow, I digress.
But that's part of the experience. And I know from my own experience, and you and I talked about that when we were hanging out there, because it's just the same for me. I might be Canadian, but I'm an English Canadian, and we learn pretty basic French growing up in school. So you don't really get to learn and apply until you're immersed, if you have that chance. Which same for me. I met my future wife. She was from Quebec, Québécoise, and this was, of course, over 12, 13 years ago, when it was the point, well, if we were going to stay together, then I needed to move to Quebec because she was a teacher and she had a job, and I was a multipotentialite, so I could do anything, go anywhere.
Sure.
Right? So, and I was interested. I wanted to learn French, and I was always fascinated with Quebec, but I just never had the chance. So, yeah, I know what it's like, and it took a good year of immersion and effort and volunteering, and I got a job, a part-time job at Sears, just stocking shelves. And here I was, like 31 years old, working with a bunch of teenagers, just to be immersed and to learn, and eventually get to that point where, you start to feel more comfortable and confident. But that adds a whole other element for sure to you and I at the time, but what you're going through in terms of this whole big life adjustment. It's not just maybe finding another job or changing careers or doing other things, but you're also learning a language and cultural immersion in a different country and all this stuff. It's a lot.
I will say today was a landmark day for me. Yeah. It's very simple and small, but I was coming in the door, and the Amazon delivery driver was coming. He was going, he was like saying, I didn't even hear what he said, but I knew he was like signaling to wait. So I let him in, and he has the package here. You go down there. And I only use like maybe 4 or 5 single French words, but I only used French with him. He had no idea I was American. And that was like, wow, that's an accomplishment. So what I find about it is I can read French pretty well. Yeah. And I'm always, with Google Translate, the tool is it makes it easy. So I go around town. I'm really, and I can even look at text and read it fairly well. I have a background also, another potential, I think. And I studied Latin and Greek in college. So, and I know I spent some time in Italy. I know some Spanish from being in Los Angeles. Yeah, so I can kind of figure out those kinds of languages based on those roots. It's hearing it and pronouncing it. It's a whole nother aspect. And that's where I feel lonely sometimes, where it's not so much I want to go out and talk to people. I mean, I want to talk to the cashier at the store. They always can speak English most of the time. Yeah. But I want to honor that language. I know that's important to people here. There's a whole that's a whole other
they'll appreciate
story.
You making the effort for sure.
I do. Yeah. And I try to at least say, bonjour, and then go hello. So I give them the clue. That's the signal. But I like being a fly on the wall and listening to people and their conversations, because sometimes it's an inspiration to me to hear what are people sharing publicly that they're talking about, and sometimes it's kind of, I'm like in a bubble of silence in a way that way.
Hmm.
So that's a little bit frustrating for me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I certainly can remember those days, even if, of course, we're here for a reason. We have a partner, most likely, or,
Hmm.
maybe you're studying or something like that. But it's getting out past that immediate relationship to have a broader community kind of
Hmm.
experience. And if you're in your native language, in your native home or country, well, we take that for granted a lot, I think. And as soon as you're somewhere else, then you start to realize how
Yeah.
much you miss it. Do you
Yes.
find does the digital kind of distance type relationships conversations you have help to make up for some of that these days?
It does. When I do these sort of like Zoom type
Yeah.
interactions or phone calls with family members, it's like I'm in that moment, and
Hmm.
that's that connection part is a real essential element of being human. That's
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and I'm aware of that. So I have that. I have a relationship with a partner. We are really connected, and
Hmm.
we could we're my birthday was recently, and in the card she wrote, she says, "I am never bored with you," and I'm never bored with her. We
Hmm.
always, we both think in the same way. One way I've also reached out to connect with others, and this is part of not having goals or saying
Mm.
I'm going to go do this. It's more of when I allow, if I just express interest in things and just be in the world, things
Yeah.
come to me. And in my
Yeah.
earlier part of the life, before the midlife, which I call adolescence, and in my world, adolescence doesn't really end until at least your mid 20s for most people because of how the brain develops. It's basically learning, you know, beyond just early childhood, which is basic survival and how to function. It's like then you're like adolescence is like, who am I?
Yeah.
Where am I going to be in this world? And then the midlife becomes the executing of that, what you think you want to be, and exploring all those things. What I've done to connect
Right.
also, this came to me. My partner Dan, her name is Dan,
Hmm.
and her sister's boyfriend is an opera singer,
Oh, yeah.
and they had a performance in Trois-Rivières, which is near
Okay.
you.
Yeah. Stevie. Yeah.
And we went up to this cathedral there, and it was Goethe's Faust, and we saw that. And I met one of her oldest students from like 25 years ago, one of her first students she ever had, who she's remained friends with. And we chit chat, and he's French Canadian, and he's a truck driver, and we're talking about him going to Utah and all kinds of things. A really nice guy. And then several months later, she says, his name also happens to be Eric.
Okay.
So she said, Eric is like, he needs to really practice his English because his job is kind of a sort of a dispatching manager for trucking companies. That's the kind of work he does. But he also works with people who are the drivers, and some of them are English speakers,
Yeah.
or sometimes the client's English speakers. So he
Hmm.
needs to practice his English, and he wants you to work with him. And I'm like, wow, that I
Yeah.
had no idea. Now, in the back of my head, I did say, maybe I could do tutoring of English.
Yeah.
So
You could.
he just showed up, and I meet with him twice a week, and there's no real
Okay.
structure. We just talk about what we're interested in, and that because he's struggling to find words in English, I'll say, okay, what did you say? And then I'm hearing things, and it's actually helping me to learn as well.
Yeah. Because is it a little bit reciprocal then that he's showing you a bit of French too?
Yes. Oh, yes.
Yeah. Good.
And then cultural thing. It's like he tells me about, oh, there's this place you might want to go visit, this park, or he has nieces and nephews,
Mhm.
and they're young, so he loves little kids, and they go to the place where they were doing the farm with the maple syrup, and
Nice.
well, so we can talk about that.
Yeah.
Arab. See, that's what
Yeah.
I'm learning all.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Neat. Cool. Well, that's it. I mean, I remember too. It's kind of one person at a time.
Hmm.
One relationship at a time. sometimes it's people you meet off and on for a few weeks, and then they kind
Right.
of fade away and you go separate ways. And yeah,
Right.
sometimes you get longer friends, but I think it's a testament to being in the moment, to really living in
Hmm.
the moment and embracing relationships, whatever they may be in that moment. It might be
Hmm.
someone you talk with for 10 minutes, maybe someone you talk with every week, right? But
Exactly.
yeah,
It's
it's an interesting time of life to
and
be in.
it's not. I'm not saying it's like, oh, it's just bliss and
Yeah.
everything's nothing's. We're human, so we're not perfect. That's the first rule. I like to. But it's a challenging. But it's like, I know what I do know is, I know deep inside, this is where I need to be.
Yeah.
This is where I want to be, and I'm going to find my way here. And it's that, that connection piece is what we're kind of talking about. That's, one of the
Yep.
things we've discussed. It's what kind of where I'm sort of feeling my way in my work. And at the end of graduate school, which was for me about 5 years ago, I started to develop this framework, which I call the Sustenance Project now.
Yeah.
And it has three components to it. And they're all, it's like, they're basically, why I call it sustenance. It's like, it's what sustenance is food.
Hmm.
It's like, what do we need to survive as human beings? So the first component is what I call the physical layer of sustenance. And this actually came out of something else I like to do also. Is I love to go, I'm a backpacker, I'm a rock climber, mountaineering. I do all that stuff for many, many years. But if you go to a place like Yosemite National Park and you talk to a ranger, they'll ask you, what do you do when you're lost in the woods? People, this happens all the time. It happens more than you think. And most people will say, well, I got to get food and water. And the answer is no. And they have this, it's called the rule of threes. And the first thing you should do is get shelter, then water, then food, because you can go 3 hours without shelter. You can go 3 days without water and 3 weeks without food, give or take.
Give it to you.
So people die of either hypo or hyperthermia from being exposed to the elements and not being, that's the thing you need to do.
Yeah.
I took that idea and said, wow, this is the real human foundation of being alive. There's one more element, which I take from the world of yoga and meditation and other practices like that. If that's not the only one, but the breath is what we need. You can go 3 minutes. So in this framework, you can go 3 minutes without breathing. Some people, they can hold it longer, but we need to breathe. And this is why in all these practices in trauma, in working with kids, and just helping people be more calm and at peace in the world, just breathe. Well, we have to learn how to breathe sometimes. So that's the physical layer. It's like, if we can't breathe, if we don't have shelter, if we don't have water and food, we're going to die. We will not survive. We need these things. So that's physical, but there's more. We need more than that. There's also the next level is what I call the connection layer. And we are, as human beings, we are often called a social species. So we need each other. That is like, you're out in the savannah, say 20,000 years ago, and there's a lion, and so you run away, you come back to the village, it's safe. And then, there's your mom or your auntie or someone else, and you come into the, your shelter, and they hug you and they hold you and they say, it's going to be okay. And you can tell them your story, because we need to have, this is all kind of wired into us. So to be able to be connected to other human beings is really important. If we, I know there's instances of like where solitary confinement in prisons, where people literally they lose, like, quote, lose their minds after a day. I mean, some people have, but so we need each other. We need to be connected with other human beings in ways that are meaningful to us. And that can vary a lot too.
Sure.
And then there's the last part. And this is what I call the purpose or the purposeful layer. It's like, and this is the really big question of life. It's like, who am I? Why am I here? What is my purpose? You know, what is this all about? What's important for this day?
Yeah.
And this is very human as well, because all you have to do is look at our literature, and it's ancient. It goes back, to biblical stories. It's Homer's Odyssey. It's Dante and his journey through hell and purgatory and heaven. It's like it's figuring out, who am I? And it goes into modern times as well. It's like, if you think of books like Paul Coelho's The Alchemist, that's a story about a young guy going on a journey and figuring out who he is and finding out what's really important to him. It's in Star Wars. It's the Lord of the Rings. I mean, it's any story, good story. It's going to have that framework. It's what Joseph Campbell did a lot of work to do. So that's kind of this idea I've been working with to take forward.
And you're living it too. I mean, now that we hear your story, right? We all are, but you're certainly living it in a visceral way.
Yes. It's the hero's journey. And it sort of starts out with, it's like you're called in the beginning, and it's like Luke Skywalker. He's like, me? Goes, well, I'm just this kid on this planet taking care of, whatever crops there are. And it's like, and then there's the learning phase, and you find out you do have strengths and talents and powers. But then there's the self-doubt and the struggle, and this is the image I like to use, because people are somewhat familiar with it, is in the story of the Lord of the Rings. It's like, and this is the same thing. Frodo's like, I just want to stay here in the Shire and eat and sleep and be a hobbit. I don't want to go out and save the world. That's not me. Well, you're crazy, Gandalf. But anyhow, the story goes on, and eventually he meets his friend Samwise, and they are traveling up Mount Doom, and they are struggling. And there's points where they are so exhausted and so worn out after all they've been through. And one will say to the other, I'm like, that's it. I'm just leave me here and let me die. I can't go on. I can't go on. And the other picks him up and literally carries him, as tired as he is. And they trade doing that. That's that hard part of the journey that we all have to kind of go through. I mean, it doesn't have to be that dramatic, but there's hard things we go through in life. But they also show us who we are. Maybe people might call it, we're building character.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's powerful stuff.
Yeah. My cat agrees too.
So this is your model for human sustenance.
Yes.
Are you, I have a PDF version. Are you open to sharing it if we put it in our notes?
Definitely. I presented it to small groups before, and part of what I want to be doing here is finding ways to get that out in the world. And it's a framework. So I'm not, a lot of things you'll see, especially, in these times of social media, and even before, is you go into a bookstore, it's like, here's the 10 things you should do to be successful if you follow this list. And the problem with that is that will work for that guy, definitely the person who wrote the book. They're being genuine most of the time,
I suppose.
And it'll work for a lot of people, but what works, it's like if it's that rigid, you must do X, Y, and Z. So a lot of the work I've done over my life is to take bits and pieces that work for me from all these different methods that make sense to me. I say, oh, this is it. That's where I'll go. And I'll say, that's interesting. I want to learn about it. And then I find out, well, this doesn't completely work for who I am. And I'm learning who I am. And I say, well, but these little elements are good. So I've combined them. So I like to use framework as a word rather than a system, a framework. A framework is like a blueprint. You go and say, okay, I'm going to build a house. That's a framework. You start building it. You put the foundation in,
and you start putting up the framing with the 2x4s for the wall, and you're all of a sudden you're like, it says there's going to be a window here, but there's like, it's right in front of a tree. So you have a framework allows you to modify as you go and be flexible. So one of the things that there's a lot of things that you can use this in education. You can use this in sort of, more contemplative, philosophical ways of living. There's a lot of ways you can apply it that I've thought about. But what I'm really interested in is, and I've learned this is sort of a legacy I want to carry on of my mom's husband. His name is Irving, and he's a teacher. I've known him since I was 13 years old, so I've known him over 50 years now.
Yeah.
And he was a great influence in my younger life. He was a teacher, both college and high school. And through all those years, he developed this thing, and he did it for the last 30 years, pretty much up to the pandemic. It's called the autobiography class, and he would help people write their stories. And he had a whole structure to it it's beautiful. And it's not, you don't have to be a writer. It's just for anybody. And he was very successful. Some of the people would keep coming to it. The only way they would leave the class over years was when they died. But they published books. So what I want to do is using that methodology that he developed in this way of teaching, which he used first in a high school setting, then he used it in a college setting, and then he, modified it for a community and adult education program setting, which was in Brookline, Massachusetts. I'm like, this is really interesting to me. And he showed me his research and some of the foundations of it and described the process. It's like, I want to take this process and help people to tell their stories. Because this is me again, it's telling stories. It's like, because if you can tell your story, I think you can be better guided on your journey through life. It's answering those basic questions. It's like, who am I? It's like, what am I doing here? What is my purpose?
It's not to say, of course, we have the answers, but at least we're asking the questions and we're trying to figure it out.
Yes, it's I think that's my tagline that I use on LinkedIn. I said, there are no answers. There are only more questions.
Yeah. Nice. So it's been wonderful hearing your story and placing, your journey and where you're at. And now we get to the question especially for all the listeners and our viewers, people who want to reach out and connect with you. What's the best way to do so? Where would you like to connect with people? What would you like to ask of them?
Yes, that's a good question. For me, there's two places that I really find meaningful for the way I like to express myself. In more of a professional setting, I'm on LinkedIn, and I believe it's EFS Larson but we can put that information in the notes. And the other one that is really my primary place these days is Substack. My company is called Rogue Learning, and we can also link to that as well on Substack. But I write a lot. It has to do with a lot of the professional things I do, but lately it's been more personal. But I always try to make it. I love photography, and I used Instagram for many years, and still do to a certain extent, to express that. But my rule for posting on social media is it can't be just about me. What I write about and what I share has to be, maybe it's something in my life, but it's like, how can this be meaningful to other people? How can they take that away?
Yeah.
So that's what I focus on. And it's organic. I see where it goes. And
nice.
Sometimes it's surprising.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. So we can reach Eric there at LinkedIn or Substack. I subscribe to your Substack. I love getting your newsletters there. Is it every couple of weeks or so? Or
I try to do it. Yeah, I try. Ultimately, I'd like to do it weekly, but I'm figuring out life here. There's a lot of big things going on. So
yeah.
But nice. When I do write something, it really comes from the heart. It's not
Yeah.
a mechanical process for me, where I'm just like, oh, I got to pump it out something, so I'll just do anything.
That's good. Yeah. Cool. And that's our intention too with this podcast is to be very intentional and purposeful and really help people make those connections and discover fascinating people. That's what we're here for. So
I appreciate the podcast very much. It's given me a lot. I listened to the entire Everything Conference series.
Oh yeah.
And that really, it was touching, and I learned, and it was broad. I mean, so many different kinds of people and perspectives, and I'm glad that you did that.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed it. Yeah, it was fun putting that together. It was definitely my goal was to try to give people a little bit of that visceral experience of, by proxy of as much as possible what it was like to be there. It was a pretty amazing thing, and again speaks to meeting people in person. So I'm glad we've done that. And anyone who happens to be coming through Montreal or Quebec, look us up, Eric or myself.
Oh yeah, I love to connect.
Yeah.
In person is definitely, as you said, there's a whole broader dimension that you can get out of that.
Great. All right. Well, thanks very much, Eric. Merci
You're
beaucoup.
welcome.
Et
Merci.
à la prochaine. Next time.
Yes.
So reach out to Eric on LinkedIn or in particular on Substack at Rogue Learning. And I highly recommend that you sign up for his newsletter. It's really fun to get his latest thoughts showing up in my inbox every week or two. So definitely reach for him there. You can send him messages directly through Substack. And yeah, in the meantime, we'll see what's in store in the next part of his journey here as he adapts to life in Canada and in Quebec in particular. It's exciting. It's great to have someone else just down the road from where I am here. Now, my next guest coming up in a couple weeks is somebody who I think a lot of you probably know in various shapes or form. We've had the pleasure of meeting in person a few times, starting off at Camp Indie and then at the Everything Conference last summer. And then we followed that up again about maybe 3 weeks after the Everything Conference when she was in Montreal and she made a detour on her way back home to Vermont, a little detour to come and meet up with me again in person. So Marty McNabb is my next guest. We did initially record something when we met in late August last year in her camper van called Brooklyn, and I had my little recording device and we had a big long conversation. And then I listened back to it afterwards, and it didn't record very well. It was all kind of a weird buzzing sound, and the quality just was really poor. I could have tried to fix it up, but I figured, well, look, why don't we record something new and fresh here months later, of course, that's a little more up to date and will have better quality and give everyone her latest news and events. So Marty, like myself, like a lot of people on the Multipod, loves to connect with people and bring people together, and especially around storytelling. So Marty's emphasis is on the things in our lives that have a lot of deep meaning. So it could be a collectible, it could be a gift, it could be just some random a t-shirt or a ticket stub, or any of these little things. It could certainly be like a photograph or, a piece of clothing, but anything that has that kind of deep connection. And she loves to bring people together to tell the stories behind those items. And they're usually, of course, related to a person in someone's life, maybe who's passed on or has otherwise a very deep connection, and the chance to share that story with others and just give the person, give the item, and give the story that real focus, kind of give it its due for even just a few minutes. But this is what she calls show and tell. They're largely done in person, but occasionally online. So we talk about how she sets this up, where you can find the events, and also kind of the companion piece that goes with this, which is her podcast, Things That Matter, which is kind of a companion piece to Show and Tales. Things That Matter is where Marty can really expand and have longer conversations with people, the people who bring items and tell the stories of those items. Well, now we get to know who these people themselves are and a bit more of their story. So it's a fun podcast. It really complements nicely Show and Tales. So that is our next episode coming up soon on June 15th with Marty McNabb. And soon after that, I'll be going back to Camp Indie. It's June 20th to 23rd of this year in near Kent, Connecticut, Northwest Connecticut. And I'm really excited because I'm going to be recording with a few people live and in person at camp for the multipod. So that'll be something different too. I've done a little bit of live in-person recording before, but the technology is getting better and better. And I'm really excited to share some of those live dynamic conversations with you too, which will be released over the course of the summer. Stay tuned. You might get a message from me too, inviting you on the show. You're always welcome to pitch some ideas and suggest yourself as a guest, share your story. We can talk about a certain topic or theme. I've got a whole list of ideas, a spreadsheet that you'll find on our website, themultipod.com. And if there's nothing there that kind of piques your interest, you can suggest something else. So this is a great show where we can really expand and explore the world of multipotentiality and how we navigate our way through these fascinating lives full of fascinating people. That's why we're here, to hear their stories. So I can't wait to bring you more, and I'll talk to you more in a couple weeks. Thanks to my guests today for sharing their story and what they're up to. You can find all the links and resources that we talked about in the description for this episode. Really don't hesitate to reach out and make that contact. Now you know that they exist, they need to know that you're out there too. A simple email or message can suffice. Or send a more substantial message if there's something that really jumped out for you. The Multipod has a new website, themultipod.com. Here you'll find the archives of the podcast in its previous form, all 111 episodes, a number of bonus episodes, and our Everything Conference mini-series, as well as the new episodes and the resources therein as they are released. Over time, we'll build it out for the best searchability and referencing possible so you can easily find who you're looking for. But a nice spreadsheet will suffice for now. The website also has a new guest application form. Let us know what topic or topics you would like to connect with people about, and we will set up a recording. As a guest, this is your primary task. Come prepared. Like all podcasts, the Multipod will thrive thanks to sharing, reviews, subscribing, and commenting if you're on YouTube, and just generally getting the word out to multipotentialites that this resource exists. So help us spread our reach and create more opportunities and exposure for everyone. You can reach me at themultipodcast@gmail.com. That's themultipodcast@gmail.com. Or again, the website is simply themultipod.com. New episodes will be out on the 1st and 15th of every month. Thanks so much for taking the time to be with us today, and we'll see you again soon.